Hi, I'm Allie from the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to go over with you how we teach our basic earring class. When we're looking for earrings, what we want to teach is how to do two techniques. We want to teach how to do just a regular eye pin, which is a turned over loop, as well as a coiled eye pin. For this, what I like to do is I like to start the students off with a list of things that they need to get. We do like them to get head pins. The head pins, if you work and you're not sure what you're doing, for beginner 3-inch head pins are the easiest to use. The most widely available are going to be 2-inch head pins. These head pins are 3-inch head pins and they are a 22 gauge head pin. I find that's the easiest to bend. You're also going to need some ear wires, whether or not you do an interchangeable lever like this, which is kind of my favorite. You can just slip your earring on and it hangs out in there. Or you can get a couple just regular French hooks or kidney hooks. It's kind of up to you. So you do need the head pins, the ear wires, and then you're going to need some beads to play with as well. Before we get started with the head pins and ear wires, what I like to do is also have my students get 22 gauge wire. Whatever color they're using, they can get an alternative color to it. So if you're using silver, you can use gold. If you're working with a sterling, it's up to you what color you get and what you want to work with. The 22 gauge wire is going to be a raw wire versus the head pin that's going to be 22 gauge wire. What this allows you to do is waste some of the 22 gauge wire because it's less expensive than the head pin since they have a little stop on them. So we're going to work with the plain wire and then we go in and work with the head pins. What I do for the plain wire is I'm going to use a couple of my pliers. I am using my wire cutters, and the wire cutters, when you're looking at them, they have two sides. They have a flat side as well as a V side. So V side, flat side. You always want to cut with the flat side closest to your project. The V side is going to sit a little bit further away, and you're also going to not get as nice of a cut. So that flat side goes closest to the project. The other pliers I'm going to be using are my round nose pliers. My round nose pliers, the only thing they're used for is to make round loops. They are graded, so they start out with a smaller loop, and the bigger and closer you go to your hand, you get a bigger loop for that. Again, the only thing they're used for is to make round loops. The last pliers that I have are a bent chain nose or flat nose pliers. I like the bent flat nose, chain nose, but you can also use just a straight chain nose pliers. That will work as well. I like these pliers just because they have that bend in them. It makes them a little easier to work with. So what I have my students do is start out by cutting a 6-inch piece of the 22 gauge wire. I cut that in half, and then what I do is I work with about 3 inches of wire. What I have them do to start with is I take my pliers, and I'm going to hold my wire so that I have about 1 inch of wire above my pliers. Holding my wire below my pliers, I bend my pliers back 90 degrees. What that will do is get a 90-degree bend in your wire. The nicer you get this original 90-degree bend, the nicer your loop is going to sit right on top of your wire. I go in with my round nose pliers, and I know at this point I'm pulling my round nose pliers because I'm making a loop. What I'm going to do is, if you were looking at this, the long piece of wire, that extra 2 inches, is going to be running parallel to your chest. The short piece of wire here is coming straight out from your chest. My pliers, when I hold them, I want to be able to see both of my jaws of my pliers. I'm going to take the wire over top of the round nose pliers till it hits the wire on the other side. I'm then going to switch from the top jaw to the bottom jaw of the round nose pliers. I then take my wire, my extra short little tab, I'm going to take it back to 90 degrees. So I start with 90 degrees and I end with 90 degrees. What that's going to do is get me my nice eye pin. The goal of the eye pin when you're looking at it is if you would draw an imaginary line from your pin section to your eye, that it's nice and straight. As you can see, mine got thrown off a little bit. The slower I do them, I find it the harder to work with. So what I'm going to do is kind of straighten it out a little bit. To straighten it out, I'll go in with my round nose pliers to the loop I just made and just kind of make it corrected and move it over. Always to where it stops on the round nose pliers. You don't want to hold out here if your loop is a lot bigger, because then what you're going to do is throw off that perfect loop that you made. Take it back to the round nose pliers where it stops and kind of correct your loop. What I have then is a little tail. At this point, if my wire is really thick or if I don't have a lot left when I'm working with my earrings, I can cut the wire right here inside the loop and turn over that loop, and that will just get me a simple eye pin that I can connect to my earring. What I like to perfect in the intro to earrings class is how to coil that eye pin. So what I do, I call this my man. This is his body and this is his head. What I'm going to do is let him lay down in bed and I'm going to wrap his scarf around his neck. If you're using a bent flat nose pliers, what you're actually going to do is hold with the back of your pliers. I'm going to hold his head, and what I say to my students is from the nose up, because you don't want to hold the wire where it's crossing over itself. I'm then going to take that wire back and coil the wire around the longer piece of wire. And when I coil, I want to coil nice and tight around the wire I'm coiling against, as well as I want those coils to be nice and tight against one another. Once I have a little bit of a stem left, I take my flat nose or my wire cutters flat side down, and I'm going to cut off that extra piece of wire. That's going to give me my coiled eye pin. To practice then with my students, I'm going to put on my beads, and for this I'm using some crystals and some lampwork beads. And I put those onto my wire, and now I'm going to practice making a loop above. To make the loop above, here's where it kind of becomes tricky. So I'm going to treat this eye pin, when I'm looking at it, that if that's just the bottom of my head pin. So I'm going to imagine that this wire sticking out is actually the bottom of my head pin. What I'm going to do is figure out how much space I need to leave above the earring in order to make a nice coiled loop. When you're looking at your beads and your materials, what you need above the bead is only enough space to do 2 to 3 coils, whatever you did at the bottom. So I'm going to hold with my flat nose pliers about 1/8 of an inch above my bead. Hold my bead, bend my pliers back away from me 90 degrees. That's going to create just a little tiny bend. And what that's going to do then is allow me some space to get my round nose pliers right in that bend, just like I did before. One loop on top of the other when I'm talking about my jaws. And I'm just going to simply take that wire over the top of the round nose pliers till the other side, switch from my top jaw to my bottom jaw, and take the extra wire back 90 degrees. This is going to get my loop. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let my guy lay down in bed. Now I always say in the class that he's gotten married and he gained a little weight. So I'm going to hold his head and wrap his scarf around his neck. And do my coils. Most people will find it easier to coil when you have another bead in place already. What I can do then is cut off this extra wire. If I have a lot of extra wire, I can also wrap over the bead to the other side. I'm going to cut this here. And that actually is going to be my little earring that I practiced making. What I actually did also was make a link so that way you can see that the earring techniques go beyond just making earrings. One thing then that I do is I have my students switch to actually making their earrings and making their set. When you load your earrings onto your head pin, and whether or not you use a decorative head pin that has a design to it, or just a regular flat bottom head pin is up to you. Sometimes this flat bottom will not stop the bead from going through to the end of the head pin. So that's why I'm going to put the smaller crystals onto the head pin on either side of my bead. I'm going to load my beads on both head pins. So I have this one here, and I would load this one as well at the same time onto another head pin. That way, what I do is I do my turns side by side. I take my pliers, I hold about 1/8 of an inch above, and I'm going to turn my wire back 90 degrees. At this point, you want to set that one down, do your next one, and then come back to this one. That way you know, even if you have a little bit of extra room, they at least hang the same length. Because one of the hard things when you're getting started is making sure that they hang and that you get enough room in between there to do your loops. I hold my jaws one over top of the other, take the wire over top of my round nose pliers till it touches the bead, switch from my top jaw to my bottom jaw of my round nose pliers, and the extra wire goes back 90 degrees. Some people will coil and wrap while they're on the round nose pliers. I don't like to do that because I feel that it actually weakens the wire loop. So always take it off the round nose pliers. I'm done making my loop so I can take it off. Take my flat nose pliers, needle nose pliers, hold, and then do my coiling. You will notice if you're working with sterling silver or copper versus a plated metal, the sterling silver and copper are going to bend a lot easier than when you're working with a plated material. This is because the sterling silver and copper are a softer material versus the plated, because it has plating on it, it makes it a little bit harder. What I do then is the last step is I attach it to my ear wire. For mine, I'm just going to slide it onto my sterling lever back, and then you're done with one of your earrings. You can continue on with another one, but that is how you do the basic earrings.